Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm really excited to mention that we have a great guest today, former LSU football player, former offensive lineman, who has a heck of a story. And obviously, I want our guest to explain his story, but from Canada, Vancouver, Canada originally, made his way to LSU. We'll let Peter Dyakowski explain his story. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, go Tigers! Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, those LSU fans are going to love hearing you today because it's been a few years. I can't believe it's already been what you did almost 12 years in the Canadian Football League. Your career was. I can't believe you've already played
11 years. Yeah, and I just retired a couple years ago. So a good long run. I spent a decade in Hamilton with the Tiger Cats. So very appropriate for a former Tiger. And then I had one more season out west with the Saskatchewan Roughriders to close it out.
And also a little stint there with Toronto Argonauts and the Saints.
Oh, we don't talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, Toronto. So Toronto, the Argos, they are the number one rival of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. You know, we're 40 miles from Toronto. They are hated here. So I signed with the Argos after a decade with the Cats, and it was a betrayal. But you know, people have fun with it now. But yeah, I had a quick cup of coffee with the Saints, and you know, Sean Payton gave me that phone call one morning that it just wasn't working for him. So I had a few months down there. That was a nice experience too, coming out of college.
I got to mention this: you were at LSU, and you were nicknamed the Mullet because of your hairstyle, and captured a national title. You were part of the 2004 national championship team at LSU. But tell everybody listening, Peter, all the Louisiana fans and all over the country, how did you get to LSU? Because you were the first Canadian football player that I can remember that ever signed with LSU for football.
Well, I had the benefit of having a great high school head coach. And his name's Todd Burnett. He's still the head coach of my high school, Vancouver College, home of the Fighting Irish, number one high school program in Canada. And you might find some people who disagree with me there. But Todd did an amazing job. Coach Burnett getting my tape all over the U.S. and not just getting it sent out, this is VHS film back then, but making sure people actually watched it. So the LSU O-line coach back then was George Yarno.
Yeah.
And he was from Washington State originally.
Okay.
Yeah, great coach. Intense game day switch too. But he got Nick Saban interested, and they flew me down for a visit. And they liked me. They saw my size. At first, they wanted to see me in person before giving an offer because, you know, Canada doesn't necessarily have a reputation for the greatest high school football compared to, you know, the South.
Yeah.
But they had me down there. They liked me, gave me the offer, and I was blown away. You know, I took my first couple visits to smaller schools, Eastern Washington, Boise State. Then I went to Oregon State and then LSU, but LSU blew me away. You know, the facilities, meeting Tommy Moffitt, the strength coach there, he is incredible. But all of that, just as a 17-year-old kid, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Walking into Tiger Stadium, I just knew that's where I wanted to be, and then they gave me the offer. I jumped at it. I didn't even have to think.
Peter, George Yarno was one of the most highly respected coaches in all of football, and he's the reason you ended up at LSU. But tell everybody how great of a coach he was, because I heard that when he left the Saban staff, that he was probably the best offensive line coach to ever work with Nick Saban.
And rest in peace. He unfortunately passed away just a couple of years ago. But tremendous coach, and he was a guy. He played, I want to say, 12, 13 years in the NFL, and had tremendous credibility because of that. But a great coaching staff. For me, it was such a change going from high school football in British Columbia to LSU at the SEC. That if I didn't have a coach like that my first year, it just might not have worked out for me. But I had someone who believed in me. Maybe he thought, because I was from the Northwest too, something of himself. He was, as nurturing as a big, tough O-line coach is going to be, but he'd give it to you hard. He had this game day switch, though, that that I think was contagious.
Yeah.
I've seen coaches since break a whiteboard on game day, but I've never seen a coach break a whiteboard on game day, not because it was an act and he wanted to get his guys fired up, but because he was actually angry at the whiteboard. He would throw 3 plates on the bench, 315, and just crank out reps in the weight room before practice.
Wow.
But a great coach, great football mind, great football IQ. A true technician. He could be an offensive coordinator easily, as much as an O-line coach.
I wanted to, before we go to break and take a break and bring you back, Peter, I wanted to mention that you were named Canada's smartest person by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. That's incredible. You were that's a heck of an honor.
I have a lot of friends who will be quick to remind me that was almost 10 years ago now. But I had the good fortune of winning a very fortunately titled TV show. I had a good night.
And also, I found out that you went on a famous game show. We'll talk about that when we come back. One that's been on forever in the United States, and you almost won it. But we'll be right back with more Peter Dyakowski from Canada, former LSU offensive lineman, national champion in 2003. And I want to ask Peter when we come back, if the rumor was true, that did he drive his vehicle to LSU? I heard you drive your vehicle all the way from Canada to LSU. I'll get that thought from you, too, when we come back. You're listening to the Sports Scout Report. We're going to take a quick break, Peter. We're going to bring you back. We're going to be right back. Listen, whatever you're driving right now, Tommy Harvey wants it. Bring it in to Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City, or John Harvey Toyota. They're paying big bucks for all trades right now. They'll cut you a check right there. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back to the Sports Scouting Report. Our guest today is Peter Dyakowski, who had a heck of a career in the Canadian Football League, played 11 years, was all CFL a few times, and a great player with the LSU. The only Canadian, I think, football player that I can remember that signed out of high school a scholarship to LSU in football. But, Peter, when you signed with LSU, is the rumor true that you drove your vehicle all the way to Baton Rouge from Canada?
Yes, I did. I bought a grade 11, junior in high school. I bought a 1979 Pontiac Firebird for $425.
Cool.
And I love that car.
There you go.
So there's only one way I was going to get down. I was driving that thing down. It was about a 45-hour drive.
Wow.
And I was going to do it on my own, and then my family decided they wanted to come down too. So we did a caravan, 2 cars in a row, and it was nice to have the backup, but we never needed it. The car did not let me down the whole way there. And I drove as my daily driver all through university, and I towed it back up to Canada when it came time. And it sat in my garage here in Hamilton for 10 years. And
wow.
I did brake lines last summer, and I actually just had it out the other day for the first time, driving it around all day long. The most I've driven it since it left Baton Rouge, actually, just the other day. And the funny thing is, there's a Mississippi restaurant in town here, and they were doing a Cajun night. They had a full Louisiana menu for their Saturday supper, so I got takeout from there. Wow. I just thought it was funny. The last time I drove my car anywhere was probably to go eat somewhere in Baton Rouge.
That's incredible. I got to find out where you bought that vehicle, because if I can keep a vehicle 25 years, that's a great investment, Peter.
I could probably sell it for more than $425 now. Not much more if you've ever seen it. There's more rust than paint on it, but I'm very fond of the vehicle.
I want to mention that in 2014, you appeared, I didn't know this, but you appeared on the famous show Jeopardy and finished 3rd place. That's not bad.
Bronze medal. They gave me $1,000, so I can't complain. And I got to meet Alex Trebek.
Oh, man.
Rest in
peace.
A great Canadian legend, and one of my idols. So it was incredible to meet him, and he's very good at making you feel better after you've lost. So I had a nice chat with him afterwards, and he grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, down in northern Ontario. He grew up a Hamilton Tiger Cats fan.
Really?
And so I was talking to him after the show, and we were talking football, and he was telling me all his favorite players, and these are all the all-time greats from way back. But I knew a couple of them from Alumni Association events that are still around. But it was kind of cool. and I was in awe, and it was a great experience. I would have preferred to have won, but there's a lot of people I think who could say that. But it was cool to get on, and I got a free trip down to Southern California, and then I took a cab directly to In-N-Out Burger after to just eat as much as I could, so I forgot about the shame of losing.
Yeah, rest in peace, Alex Trebek. My mom and dad were huge Alex Trebek fans. My mom cried, and I did too. I watched him when I was a little boy. I'm 50 years old, and when I was little, I used to watch a show when it was on, and rest in peace, one of the greatest ever. That's a great story. I didn't know he was a Hamilton fan, and you playing there for that long term. I mean, that had to make your day. Like you said, you lost, but you made a friend, and it was one of your idols, right? So.
Oh, I've got a great photo with him, and I framed the check, the $1,000 third place check they gave me. There's a nice memento from that.
We're gonna take a break. When we come back, I'm gonna talk to Peter about the Canadian explosion here in the United States. Since you played at LSU. Peter, there's a lot of Canadian football players and basketball players now in college athletics in the United States. And I want to get your thoughts on that. And also I saw some quotes from some GMs in the Canadian Football League that talked about the impact that college football in the United States has made on Canada, that the more success these kids have in the U.S., the better it's helping the high school game back in Canada. Get your thoughts on that. We'll be back with more of Peter Dyakowski, former LSU offensive lineman, and Hamilton, not Toronto, but Hamilton. We'll talk more with Peter when we come back. Looking for a used car? Harvey Autos has 3 dealerships, which means 3 times the used vehicles. They've got everything from fuel-efficient compacts to luxury models, even hybrids, and certified pre-owned with a warranty. Check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, or Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Welcome back. You listen to Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. Our guest is Peter Dyakowski. Peter, what's your thoughts on in the United States now that since you played at LSU in 2003, there's been an explosion of kids coming to the United States now playing college football?
Well, the secret's out. I mean, Canada produces a lot of great athletes. Now, because maybe some Canadian high school sports aren't as competitive as the U.S., there's no West Monroe in Canada necessarily turning out football players.
Yeah.
But you've got a country with a population similar to that of California. So how many top athletes come out of California? I mean, there's way more people in Canada than there are Florida. So there's a lot of natural talent. There's a lot of kids coming from Quebec, not nearly as many as in the U.S., but the ones who might be better at it are probably more inclined to play anyway. So there's a lot of good players, a lot of great linemen too. But skill positions, lots of great receivers and defensive players coming out of Canada. And schools know, look north of the border, and there's a bit more upside on some of those players. If you get him from a program that's not quite as well developed as some of the top 5A schools in Louisiana, for instance, then there's more upside potential with that player because he's not been in that sort of a program to develop him further. So you get him into a top college program, you could blossom even more.
I want to mention some of the Canadian natives that you'll get a kick out of. I want to mention some of my favorites that are currently playing college ball and in the NFL now. Currently at Alabama, John Michie is from Brampton, Ontario. I know you know where that's at, Peter.
Yeah.
John Michie's one of the top college football players coming up. He's going to be a junior at Alabama. That's the rival of LSU. They don't like me saying the word Alabama around here. But and then Chuba Hubbard. Remember Chuba at Oklahoma State? Went to Alta.
Yep.
Sherwood Park. And then he ran for 2,000 yards in 2019 at Oklahoma State. And then Clemson signed their first player from Canada from Brooks, Alta. Alta must be a great area for talent. Augie, and then Chase Claypool from Notre Dame is with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then Neville Gallimore, who played Oklahoma, defensive tackle, or a few names to mention. But your thoughts on that? Do you still keep up with the LSU Tigers in college football, Peter?
Oh yeah, and that magical season 2 years ago, where it was just fantastic to watch. But I keep up. I was there for 5 years, which is a long time, especially at that age. So even though I played a lot longer in the CFL, you have this lifelong affinity. I'll always be a Tiger. In my office here, hanging up, I've got as much LSU stuff as I've got CFL memorabilia. And I always like to think we might get a few more Canadians down there at LSU, but there's a lot down there, lots getting down into the SEC. And then a lot of them find their way back up to the CFL. So we're seeing more and more guys on CFL rosters who are Canadians with U.S. college experience.
I want to mention, I don't know if you knew this, but the LSU baseball team, and I know you probably followed LSU baseball when you were there as a student because they were really good, but they signed their first Canadian baseball player this year. His name is Theo Milas. I don't know if you know Theo, but he's 6'4", 200. He actually pitched tonight and had 3 Ks, 3 strikeouts. He's going to be a pro prospect, a freshman. So the baseball program at LSU, got to remember from Canada, is Theo Milas.
Okay, I gotta watch out for my. Now, when I was down there, I went my freshman and sophomore years. I went to every single home baseball game.
Wow.
Aside from spring break, I had a group of guys. We call it Coons Corner. Up in the corner, a bunch of guys that, a couple of the guys in that crew on the football team, a couple of walk-ons, a couple of scholarship guys, and all, half of them are related from, just to the somewhat to the south and the west of Baton Rouge, and I just for whatever reason fell in with those guys, and I went to every single baseball game. I've got a box somewhere here with about a dozen foul ball and home run balls.
Really? I mean, I didn't realize you were that big of an LSU baseball fan. People are going to love hearing that because it sounds to me like you didn't miss many games. That's a true attended fan there, being an LSU football player going to that many games. That's pretty good.
Well, and I had a policy too. We got free tickets as students.
Okay.
But I had a policy that I always snuck into the stadium. So I usually there's a spot on the fence at the old Alex box you could climb easily. So just for whatever reason, just to satisfy the challenge of it, I went to every single home game and I snuck into every single one. I probably had maybe 5 tickets torn on me the whole time. But that's because some big catches turns you around. I was 18, right?
Well, I'm glad you didn't get injured.
But it was good. Cracked up a little bit. Ivan Nacarata. I got to say, Ivan Nacarata. He's from Quebec. I want to say he was on the team back then, and so he was my favorite. And his at bat song was Led Zeppelin, the Immigrant Song. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Okay, yeah, I love those baseball songs when they come up to bat, and they still do that. I want to take a break and, Peter, bring you back for one more segment and talk about the Canadian Football League, because I know the Canadian Football League would appreciate us promoting the league here in the United States. And if you've got any stories to think about with former LSU players like Drake Nevis, who played at LSU, Drake and a few other players, E.J. Qualley, I think, played for Toronto, and a few other players in the league. But any games that stick out to you during your time with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, those 11 years, great years for you. We'll be right back with more. Peter Dyakowski, all the way from Canada, calling us tonight in Louisiana. We'll be right back. So, hey, guys, just wanted to take a minute to tell you about Harvey Autos. If you need a new or used car, there's 3 great dealerships right here worth checking out. John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, and Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. I want to mention this stat about Peter. Peter was 6'5", 315 pounds, a small lineman at LSU, which is crazy to say 315 was small, huh, Peter?
Yeah, well, I got a little bit bigger later on. I touched 325 later years, and then in the pros I got up to 330, 335. But yeah, it was overall, kind of a stick for however fit a 300-pounder could be.
Yeah, and it's amazing these guys playing nose guard now at like 360 and 350 at 6'2". And tell
there's some big boys.
Tell everybody about the Canadian Football League, because I told you before the show, Peter, I watched you play in a few games via ESPN2 and their great relationship with the Canadian Football League. Watched all their games, as many as I could watch, mostly because of you and a couple of LSU players and Louisiana guys. But there's some big D tackles. There's some talent in the Canadian Football League. People don't realize that. I think the league got faster in the last 20 years and got more talented compared to the 80s and 70s when I was growing up. But the speed in the Canadian League will really shock people. I mean, in the talent at linebacker now, and like I said, D-line, I mean, you had to go up against some phenomenal strong guys every week that easily could start in the NFL.
It was a wake-up call when I first got up there. I'd been drafted by the Tiger Cats my junior year. So I, still, of course, played out my senior year at LSU. My senior year was my first year actually starting the whole year. So, I had to stick around for that. But I'd been drafted by the Cats. I had that quick cup of coffee with the Saints, and then I went up and sat in Hamilton. And I had a little bit of arrogance. I thought, coming up from the SEC, this is going to be a piece of cake. But in the SEC, you might be playing against a D tackle or a D end who's going to go on to be a first-round pick and have a nice long NFL career. But he's still, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. You're going in the pros against a 28-year-old, peak of his game. There was a huge learning curve. But there's some big boys up there. And I've got some great stories. I think Doug Brown, he tackle for Winnipeg, he was about 6'8", 315, powerful. He had a stint down in the NFL for a bit. But to touch on some LSU guys, I had a teammate, Blake Nevis. So we never overlapped at LSU. He came in just after me.
Okay.
But he played with us in Hamilton, and then he went on to play with Winnipeg with the Blue Bombers. So we were teammates in Hamilton, but he was, young, fresh out of LSU. He bounced on the NFL for a few years. So he had a lot of fire. And, in practice,
yeah,
in the pros, in practice, you've got a lot of games, so it's an 18-game regular season. And Drake is one of the hardest practicers early in his career that I remember going up against. He was a load. And then I got to play against him when I went for Saskatchewan. He went over to Winnipeg, and that's the big rival for Saskatchewan. So we played against each other. They call it the Banjo Bowl, the annual rivalry game between Saskatchewan Roughriders, Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So we had an LSU versus LSU matchup on the line there. I thought it's going to Terrence Tolliver.
Yeah.
He had a 4-year run with the Tiger Cats.
Yeah, Hempstead, Texas native. Yeah, the big Terrence. So Terrence played a few years in the Canadian League, huh, Peter?
Oh, yeah, he's tall. He could get up there. He actually had a 1,000-yard season one year.
Yeah, he was.
And then we had he had a good run. We had Ejiro Kwali. I played against him a fair, but he was with Toronto for a few years. And we had him come in at LSU just for 2 years. He was a junior college transfer.
Yeah.
So he and Claude Roten were both junior college transfers the same year.
Yeah, and I think Claude was from Bastrop, Louisiana. I think EJ was from Florida, right, Peter? He was from Florida, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and Claude had a great career in the CFL for a short time, I believe, too, huh?
Yeah, he came up. He had first a few years in the NFL. He was a pretty high draft pick, or higher mid-round pick, and then he ended up with Argos, and then he went out west somewhere. But I played against a couple of times. It was nice to see an old teammate on the other line from you. He had a big college career. He had a couple big years. And he got drafted actually ahead of Kyle Williams.
Yeah.
There's another good Louisiana high school football player there. But I always thought that Kyle was, in college, technically very proficient. And, sure enough, he proved to be a great, durable, reliable guy for the Bills. Just down the road from me here in Hamilton. So I went to see him play a couple of times. Caught up with his family a few times over the years.
You know what? I don't know if you knew this, but Kyle Williams is now coaching high school football where he went to high school at Ruston High School, Peter. I don't know if you knew that. He's now a coach at his old high school.
I have been to a Ruston high school football game.
Really?
Yeah. We were roommates for 1 year. I forget which year it was. We were roommates. I went up to Ruston a couple times, and I've also been to see a La Tech game.
Okay. Yeah.
So so I do have some. I get some Louisiana football bona fides beyond just LSU.
Well, you had the experience, Peter. You went to LSU baseball games. I mean, you visited Kyle Williams' hometown, being his roommate. I mean, you really took in Louisiana pretty good for those 4 or 5 years here, and I love the story about you.
I had a great experience,
and people love hearing that, and you're a Tiger forever. I think they love hearing that, and you talking about how you have your office mostly, LSU, Whit Hamilton, obviously Tiger Cats, but and I know if you see a big offensive lineman coming up and you know him, I'm sure you're going to try and get him to go to LSU, right? One day, if you can.
Oh, for sure. I mean, any young man in high school, if he gets an offer from LSU, I don't think you need to even think about it. Does anyone ever pick anywhere but LSU if they get multiple offers? Yeah. I've never heard of it happening.
Yeah. We're going to take – I want to go ahead and ask you this, and you would love this real quick, but I want to run through some guys from LSU. Some you might be familiar with from that 19 team, Peter, and some are probably some guys maybe you don't know. But I'm going to list all the guys that might get drafted by LSU, something you might be interested in the listening audience for the Thursday draft. Is this Thursday NFL draft in the United States, the National Football League? LSU might have 3 football players drafted in the first round, Peter. Jabril Cox, a linebacker, who's 6'3", 235, runs a 4.5, 240. Terrace Marshall from that 19 team from Parkway High School in Shreveport's got a chance to go in the first round. And Jamar Chase, I know you remember Jamar from that 19 season with Joe Burrow, but Jamar Chase is going to be one of the first 5 picks in the draft Thursday. Might go 4th pick in the draft. Get these stats, Peter, from the 19 season with Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase had 84 catches, 1,780 yards, almost 2,000 yards, and 20 touchdowns. That's some crazy stats for the SEC.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, that team all around, that was statistically the best team to ever play college football.
I believe it. And here's some other guys that might get drafted. Tyler Shelvin, speaking of big D tackles, nose guards, 6'3", 346 pounds, can run a 5.40, and he was 370, right? And so now he's about 346. He's a guy that can run 5.
Down.
And then and Zach Von Rossenberg, a punter. Get this, Peter, he's 31 years old. Getting drafted as a rookie. He'll be a 31-year-old rookie as a punter, 6'5", 240 pounds. I think Von Rossum.
He could still play 15 more years.
Yeah, there you go. It'd be like 45 playing. Kerry Vincent from Texas, Port Arthur, Texas, is going to get probably drafted late in the draft as a corner. Jacoby Stevens has a chance to go in the 2nd or 3rd round as a linebacker. Racey McMath. Get this, Peter. He was the 4th receiver last year. At 6'3", 221, ran a 4.39 40 the other day for the Pro Scouts. That's
the Tommy Moffitt strength and conditioning program.
Isn't that wild? I mean, he was the 4th receiver last year, and he was the 5th receiver in 19 for Burrow. He's 6'3", 221 out of Edna Carr High School in New Orleans, Louisiana. And some people say Racey McMath might go in the 3rd round, Peter, and he didn't even start most of his career because he was behind Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, and Russell Gage, and so many others that came through. Russell Gage is with the Falcons, Atlanta, and it's just amazing.
Well, I thought firsthand. I mean, Louisiana's a football factory, and I had teammates who only saw the field on special teams, who would start in any other conference, who had as much or more talent than a lot of guys who get a pro shot, and so having a guy who's number 4 getting picked doesn't surprise me one bit. But I've always thought that Tommy Moffitt plays a huge role in the development of the LSU athletes because no other coach spends as much time with them. No one spends that year-round time in anyone else's program, where whatever part of the year you're in, you're still spending time every day, every week with Tommy and his strength coaches. And I think I owe a huge amount of my success and career longevity to that. But as long as we got him, they're doing okay.
I got one more kid. And what'd they call Tommy at LSU? He moffatized you when you were ready to go. Tory Carter is a fullback. Get this. He didn't play but maybe 10 reps a game at LSU probably as a blocker because they're phasing out the fullback in college football basically now. 6'1", 260 pounds, Peter. Benches 450. Runs a 4.69 40. So he's going to get drafted to like one of those really tough power I teams like the Steelers or the Ravens, that runs the ball a lot. And he's probably going to be pretty fresh because he hadn't had to play the full game, in his 4 years. But from Georgia, 260 in weight, 6'1", 4.69 40 fullback. That's a big guy.
Oh, that's a big guy hitting the line. So in the CFL, we've only got 3 downs. See, you don't get that same build of fullback because you can't build an offense around 3-yard runs. But you go in some of those offenses, you can just keep beating a guy like that the ball, and he'll just keep passing through the line and getting the distance they need.
I want to mention this to the American listeners. Second down is third down in Canada, right?
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, you don't want to be in second and long. There's a lot of punting in the Canadian game.
And then the end zone is bigger than the end zones here in the United States. How many more yards, Peter, is the end zone in Canada? It's a bigger end zone.
It's 20 yards deep versus 10.
That's
so
crazy.
Yeah, and the field's wider. So the field's 65 yards wide.
Wow.
So the end zone is over twice as big. There's way more room in the end zone. Red zone offenses completely different because of that.
You know what I just thought of? If you make a tackle from one side of the field to the other side of the field, Canada, that's almost a 70-yard run.
Oh, it is a marathon. We had a receiver, Sam Giguère, from Quebec, but he had a couple years with the Colts, I want to say, and the Giants in the NFL, and then he came up to the CFL, and now he pushes a bobsled for Team Canada. But he was a big wide receiver, 235, jack, all muscle.
Wow.
He gets up to the CFL, and this guy, he's just gassed. He doesn't have an ounce of fat on him, but he's gassed when he's got to play wide side receiver, getting back to the huddle back and forth. I've never seen a guy so tired in my life who's in such good shape. He actually had to lose about 15 pounds of muscle just to play that position up here because it changes so much.
Wow. And then an out pass is really an out pass in the Canadian League for a quarterback. That's a heck of an out pass. Peter, tell everybody what you're doing now before we go. I mean, tell all those LSU fans. I mean, I know you've been in Canada, you're retired from the CFL, but I know that you were in politics a little bit. Are you still doing that, or what are you doing these days?
Well, we'll see if my wife lets me run again. I had a repeat of my Jeopardy performance in the 2019 Canadian federal election. I ran for a member of Parliament for one of the ridings here in Hamilton, and did not win. And so now I'm convincing my wife to let me try it all over again the next time we get an election called. Could be this fall. And in the meantime, I've been very, very busy. I built a property company in Hamilton while I was playing, and now I'm an executive with Scholars. We're a North American-wide tutoring system founded in Canada. It's a franchise system. We've got over 60 locations now across North America, and our first location in Louisiana is opening in New Orleans.
Come on, get out of here.
Within a couple of weeks, yeah. It's in Metairie. Our franchise partner is Teron Armstead. So fantastic New Orleans Saints, all-pro player. All of our American locations are in partnership with elite athletes, and we provide very high-quality after-school supplemental education programming to students through all grades, kindergarten through the 12th grade.
Okay. And
for any of your listeners in Metairie, it's at 701 Metairie Road in the old Metairie Village Plaza. We just finished the build-out there, so keep an eye out for Scholars opening, and that's our first location in Louisiana.
And you're gonna this is gonna be able to bring you back, huh? To come check on it. You're gonna have to come back to Louisiana soon, right?
Well, we're going to have to come down for the grand opening. So some of our senior team members were just down there. Actually, our U.S. headquarters is in Fort Lauderdale, and so we have a nice southeastern presence. But that's a wonderful location. We're looking forward to helping a lot of students. We're helping thousands of kids across North America, and in what's been a very challenging academic year with all the disruptions in so many school boards.
Well, you've done great. I'm really proud of you. I mean, that's incredible. I know that you were an academic all-world at LSU. Like a friend of mine, I told you I'm friends with Gerald Bergamo that played center at LSU. You told me that you used to look at all those pictures in the Hall of Fame room at LSU when you were a player. You remember seeing all the greats before you, and a lot of those guys were offensive linemen that were academic All-Americans like yourself. It's really great to see that you're involved in the community and partnering with not just Canada, but like you said, opening up these locations for helping kids in the United States. We need to bring you back on as it gets closer. I can help promote it a little more if you want me to. We
should have you down for the grand opening.
Yeah, we'll try and work something out. If I'm not scouting at West Monroe or something like that, I'd love to do that. And Peter, don't hang up. I'm going to actually get with you because I want to get your address to mail you one of our magazines. And I think you would enjoy it. It's our high school preview college magazine with LSU and all the schools this September. And I want to get you a copy from last year. And but don't hang up. I appreciate you being a part of the show. It really meant a lot to me to get you on. I think the LSU fans are going to be really pumped to hear this interview.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yes, definitely. Don't hang up. We're going to get in the show. Everybody go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and pre-order a magazine for this coming September. We're going to this is our 25th year to put out our preview magazine for promoting the high schools, all 300 high schools, Peter, and all 12 colleges, and all the recruitings in here for the 221 season. It'll be our 25th preview that'll come out in September, lafootballmagazine.com. We will see everybody on Friday. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.